Alright, so I would like to discuss, we want to do a few videos about Jean-Paul Sartre. I want to do like 5 of them, 5 or 6 of them. This is a vintage book which I bought for $20 at a bookstore in downtown Omaha called Jackson Street Booksellers. And it really is one of my prized possessions because of how old it is and how nice and pretty it is. And I guess that's what and this has selections from many of his works, including Being and Nothingness. I have Being and Nothingness, a copy of that, among all my books in the other room, but this has parts from Nausea, parts from the Critique of Dialectical Reason, among some of his other works. So in this one, I want to talk about the being and the self. I guess a little bit about where he's at with that, and talk a little bit about the being in itself and the being for itself. So, being for Sartre is something that is divided into being in itself and being for itself. However, I kind of want to talk about the self itself. I mean, the human self, human consciousness. A little bit about that. And the being in itself is a unconscious, complete, concrete thing, whereas being for itself is a conscious agent. It's a conscious being. And the being for itself and the being of us, the self itself, the consciousness is not a complete thing. It's incomplete and not totally whole. And basically the truth about who we are as people is what Sartre is getting at. It's about who we are as people, and he talks a lot about self-negation and nothingness, and what that has to do with anything is that since we are not whole, we are not totally complete as people, nothingness can basically come and fill in parts of us that are incomplete. And that's where we get nothingness, and that's where we get bad faith. That is where we get anguish. Bad faith is basically self-denial, denying of who you are yourself. And sometimes the self will try to actualize the being in itself and try to become a complete and whole being, and by trying to be the in itself rather than the for itself, which it totally actually is. And I'll talk more about bad faith in a different video. But basically, what's going on here is it's about who we are as people. That's basically what's going on here. So if you don't know, in the beginning of Being Nothingness, he has an essay. The whole thing is an essay on phenomenological ontology. It's about who we are as people. It's about being itself. So it's kind of like Kant, however, it's a little bit different. So pretty much we have basically we have a incomplete self. And what this essay on phenomenological ontology is he in that he rejects the Kantian noumenon. And what that means is that there's just phenomenology. What you see is what you get. It's all about appearances. It's about the phenomenon, and the phenomenon as an absolute thing, and how we don't, and kind of like with the Husserlian idea that we don't really go into inquiry beyond what we get, beyond the phenomenon itself. It kind of makes the phenomenon sort of an absolute thing. So the being in the self, basically, it kind of is an existentialism about who we are as people, and that we are incomplete beings, and we have this incomplete nature about ourselves. It's an incomplete nature about consciousness itself, and how we try and fill that incompleteness about ourselves with nothingness. And that's the basis of his whole existentialism. So I'm gonna make more videos about some more specific things about this. So let me know what your thoughts are below.